Welcome, everyone, to episode 150 of the NBA podcast. And the 2017-18 season has officially come to a close. The Golden State Warriors, to no one's surprise, are the NBA champions yet again. So today we are going to do our final by Felicia of the season. We'll talk about what's next for the Cavaliers, the Warriors, and the two conference finalists, the Houston Rockets and the Boston Celtics. Before we get underway, wanted to remind you can follow us on Twitter at the NBA Pod. In our bio, you can find our Twitter handle, so give us a follow as well. You can also find us on iTunes, so please subscribe, download, leave some 5-star reviews. We'd love any feedback. And we're now being hosted on the Almighty Baller Podcast Network, so check them out on Twitter at AlmightyCasts. Joining me today, as always, is my very stable genius of a co-host, Morten Jensen. How's it going, Mort?
Not well, Brian, because the Warriors ruined the NBA.
Didn't we just have this talk in the last episode?
Yeah, I think we
Come
did.
on. And I'm going to have a column up at Give Me Sport on Monday about this as well, because I just think the whole thing is so absurd. I saw Darnell Mayberry, I think he still writes for the Oklahoman, had a tweet this morning up about competitive balance is dead in the NBA. It died on July 4th, 2016. It's like
He's actually a Bulls beat writer now.
Is he?
The Athletic. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, he used to be. He used to write for the Oklahoman, right?
He did.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so I'm assuming that's just still some Kevin Durant saltiness left over. But I mean, can we wait until next year? Can we wait until this summer at least to see how all of these teams reshape themselves and see what happens with the Rockets and the Celtics before we declare the Warriors to be the champions next year?
Oh,
can we
for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not. You're not going to get me to crap on Darnell because he likes Wendell Carter Jr. So I'm just going to stay out of that one.
That's reasonable. And we will have plenty of draft talk, not in this episode, but the draft is less than 2 weeks away, so we're going to really ramp up.
And remember what I said? When we did the mock draft, it was this is the first of many. We've had one, Brian. We need to we really need to amp this up.
We'll get going. We'll get going. Until we do, though, Mort, we do have to say goodbye to the final four teams of this year's season. I mean, we have to start with the Cleveland Cavaliers because not only do they frankly determined the fate of the NBA this summer. And really, it's the one player who dragged their lifeless body to the finals.
Kevin Love.
Kevin, yeah. Right. Well, his fate is also interesting this summer, but let's first focus on LeBron James, obviously. He's a free agent. I mean, his comments toward the end of this series all but had a glowing red sign above his head saying that he's going to leave Cleveland. He was talking about just how the Warriors overmatched the Cavs. The really bad one was what he was talking about, you need guys who are mentally sharp and have the basketball IQ to beat them. You don't just need the talent, but you need the minds too, which is... I didn't feel like he ever really threw his teammates under the bus this season, except for that. That was...
that was a Colangelo hitting under the bus type of comment right there. Yeah,
it really was. So, what chance do you give the Cavaliers of retaining LeBron James this summer? If you had to assign a percentage.
10.
That high?
Yeah, I know. 90% chance he doesn't return. So
I'm lower.
I get that. Then the only reason I'm giving them 10% is simply because it's a combination of factors. One being that there aren't really that much money on the free agency market, and he may not like the teams that are available to him this summer, and the fact that it's Cleveland, it's home. That's why I'm giving it 10%. But I mean, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, that's what I think. What Kyle Korver ended up shooting in the finals?
Possibly, yeah. I mean,
something like
you're
that.
right. He did say, especially after Game 4 in his final press conference, he said his family will factor into his decision. He's got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. They're going to have more of a say than they did probably the last time and the last two times he made these moves.
We want to see you play with Uncle Chris Paul.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And, I transferred schools when I was in middle school. It sucks. I get it. But, I was a fat, pale Jewish kid with an afro. They're LeBron James's kids. I think it's going to be a little bit easier for them.
What changed? I'm not seeing any change.
The hair went a little bit thinner now. No, I mean, I think you're right. The family thing is the only thing tying him to Cleveland at this point, because you can't look at the Cavaliers, see what he did this season just to drag them to the finals, and then say they give him the best chance to win a title next year. Like
Right.
they just can't make enough moves to even the playing field against the Warriors. When they traded Kyrie, that was it for this Cavaliers team's competitiveness against Golden State. Like, if they could turn back time, they would either just keep Kyrie or trade him, go somewhere else and get like the two-way wing they need against the Warriors. Jay Crowder turned out not to be that. Isaiah Thomas, they had to give up like a month after he started playing again. So that was it. Like, that was the difference. They just didn't have that second guy. And as we learned after Game 4, LeBron apparently injured his hand. He said he broke it up. I've seen reports as like a severe bone contusion, but he basically punched a whiteboard after Game 1. And there have been pictures now circulating on Twitter that like the hand was legitimately swollen.
Oh yeah.
And now, like, I saw a thread on Twitter too about like he just wasn't using it all that. He was like taking a bunch of layups lefty. So, they lost that series in Game 1. You could argue, Game 1 was they should have won. Frankly, Game 3 they were close until Kevin Durant did the same exact thing he did in Game 3 last year. So maybe that's the Cavs' pitch to him is like, hey, we were really close to being 2-2 after 4 games, but he's gonna be like, yeah, we still got swept, and I put up a fucking 51-8-8, and we still lost.
Yeah.
Like, what more could I possibly do? That said, they do have a couple trade assets that, if they are trying to retain LeBron, they have the number 8 pick in this year's draft, and they have Kevin Love. Do you think they should try to dangle either of those or package those together ahead of the draft to make some sort of like last-ditch trade effort to keep LeBron in Cleveland?
Let me get that one more time. Kevin Love in the draft pick?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing, Brian, and people are probably going to be in my mentions now, but you know how Denver is apparently looking to shed Kenneth Faried and offering 14th to do it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a situation with Kevin Love and 8th. Because, I mean, Love is good, don't get me wrong, but look at that contract and look at how little he's produced in the last few years with the Cavs. I mean, are we sure that there are teams out there that would be actively going for Kevin Love and take on that deal?
I mean, there's only one more year is guaranteed, and he has a $25.6 million player option in 2019-20. I think he's not nearly the albatross that, not Fareed, but like a Ryan Anderson, who we'll talk about later.
Just note, I didn't use that word, though.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
right.
I think there would be teams that would go after Kevin Love, yeah.
Okay.
I think you could. There are teams that just like need someone to fill seats, and maybe they can sell themselves on, take LeBron away from Kevin Love, and maybe Kevin Love turns into his old Minnesota self where he's averaging 25 and 12 a night.
Now that you mention it, I mean, they do have a glaring hole at the 4.
Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they. The problem is I don't know, like, unless you're. Maybe, I guess, if Minnesota is worried about Jimmy Butler leaving after next year,
Right.
that could be something.
Maybe the Cavs are looking at Andrew Wiggins. They have the intel on him, and then they just do the trade that they already did 4 years ago. But again,
would Andrew Wiggins keep LeBron James in Cleveland?
well, no. But I don't think anything does, Brian. I mean, to answer your original question, even if they did chop Kevin Love in 8th, and even if they got back, someone really good, is that enough? I'm not sure. I think LeBron is probably set on not returning, and I'm sure his kids are also looking at it and going, "Daddy, we don't want you to play with Rodney Hood again. Rodney Hood makes me sad."
Yeah, probably. I mean, the Love plus 8 for Jimmy is at least interesting, but I agree. The problem with this is that LeBron is not going to tell them his plans by June 21st. So they're going to have to go into the draft not knowing whether they even have a chance of retaining him, and there's no point in trading for a Jimmy Butler or anyone else if you don't know that you're getting LeBron back, because otherwise Jimmy Butler's just going to walk in a year anyway, and then you just pissed away the number 8 pick, which is like theoretically your best building block if LeBron leaves. So I'm with you. I don't think, unless LeBron commits to staying or says like, if you get this player, I will stay next year, I don't think you do it. Right. So that then begs the question, Mort, they have the number 8 pick. Who do you think they should go after with that spot?
Oh, I mean, that depends on who's there. Who is that?
Let's say Ayton, Doncic, Bamba, Jackson, Bagley are all gone.
Yeah. So then
you still got like Trae Young, Wendell Carter.
Obviously, I'm picking Wendell Carter because he's the guy who I think is the best guy of those mentioned. But I mean, Trae Young would also make a great foundational piece if his game transfers, which I think it will to some extent. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's going to be a 28-9 guy like he was at Oklahoma, but I definitely think that people are sleeping on him. And if he could come in and become like this sort of Steph Curry clone, not saying he'll be Steph, but then a homeless version Steph, that's still good. I mean, that's still perfectly fine. So it has to be between those two, Carter or Young. Either way, though, like I just think they need to focus on the future.
Yeah,
I don't think they can make any moves that really makes LeBron go, oh, I want to sign here for the next 5 years.
Right.
The thing about me, I'm looking at free agency as well. They're so over the cap and even into luxury tax. But if LeBron leaves, that's one less salary slot. So I wonder if they would go after Mario Hezonja. Like if they get a rookie in the draft and go for Hezonja, that would be like a fine start for them in terms of rebuilding. I'm not sure what you follow up with. Like you'd have to re-sign Rodney Hood. Jordan Clarkson would still be on the roster. Like I don't know really what you do there. It's a weird team, isn't it?
It's very weird. Before we move into that free agency stuff, I do want to ask. So let's say the Magic take Young at 6, the Bulls take Carter at 7, and try to lure you back in. Do you give Michael Porter Jr. consideration at number 8, or do you go with one of the Bridges?
Yeah. Michael Porter Jr. is a fun case because that back injury is legit. That when you have surgery on your back, that's a big thing. Like I've had back issues. My father's had back issues for years and years and years, and we've been like combined. We've been to the doctor like 50 times about it, and we've always gotten the same message in return, which was, if you're ever going under the knife for a back injury, like that shit is dangerous. Like it can go both ways. So the fact that he did go under the knife with his back is really troublesome. And adding to that, there is a growing concern amongst draft experts that Porter is like a 6'10" Zach LaVine, like a scorer who will just put up a lot of stats but won't really have a meaningful impact on the game. So there's two ways to go about it here. You can draft Michael Porter. You can hope that his back turns out okay. And if it does, and if he puts up 20 a night, you can use that and see if there's some schmuck team out there that wants to go, oh, wow, he's fantastic. We'll give you the moon. I mean, that's a play. But if I'm Cleveland, I would want to go for a guy I knew would be there long-term and who would have a long-term impact.
So does that leave you with Mikal Bridges or Miles Bridges? Or another one, it's like a wild card, Zaire Smith.
Zaire Smith. I mean, Zaire Smith is definitely interesting. And at that point, like 8, I wouldn't mind them reaching for him at all. I think that could work. He's extremely gifted athletically, strong defender. Does appear to have a 3-point stroke that can transfer. So, yeah, I mean, you could go that route. I think Miles Bridges, though, would be very interesting. He's sort of like a small ball 4, can play the 3 and the 4. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Mikal Bridges. He's just not as NBA ready as Mikal is. but he can rebound, he can pass, he can handle the ball, he can shoot. He does a lot of small things. Like, don't get me wrong when I'm mentioning LeBron here, because he's not LeBron by any stretch of the imagination, obviously. But he can mimic the role. Like, he can come into that setting and he can facilitate a little bit. He can rebound. He can run the break. He's just like, he's 20% at best, like at what LeBron is. Right. So, or 10% even. But he will mimic that role at least. And if that is attractive to Cleveland, if they can develop him further into becoming one of those guys who's like a two-way player who drops 17, 5, and 5, I mean, that's worth looking at.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if the back injury scares Cleveland off of Porter, if they get his medicals, I know he did a test with the Bulls medical staff, and they're going to distribute his medicals after that. So if Cleveland sees something they don't like and they're between one of the bridges, you're right. I think they go Miles over Mikal. Mikal's like, he's going to be a great complimentary guy, but if you don't have LeBron James on your team, he's not going to be able to be a complimentary guy. He's going to walk into a system where they need him to do more, and I don't think that's going to end well for him necessarily. Whereas Miles could be more of that takeover scorer, even though you're right. I think the way I've been perceiving the two bridges is like Mikal has a higher floor and a lower ceiling. Miles has a lower floor and a higher ceiling. Take your pick.
Right. And besides, I mentioned a trade proposal to you in the DMs. Mikal Bridges is not going to be available.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so then let's assume LeBron leaves. Do you think Cleveland just burns down this roster at this point? Trade Kevin Love for whatever?
Oh, no, they're building around Kyle Korver, who shot 6.3% in the finals. No,
I mean, yeah, what do they do? Do you re-sign Rodney Hood and just build around him and Larry Nance? Trade Kevin Love for whatever you can get?
I mean, I need you to wash your mouth with soap by just uttering the phrase "building around Rodney Hood." Look, no, I mean, I like Rodney. He was good in Utah. I think there is a world wherein he returns to form, but you have to look at what happened this year, and that has to play into the amount you pay him in the summer.
Right.
Like, you are nowhere near the $15-16 million a year contract that he was looking at before. You were in the mid-level exception area, if that, which is pretty insane to say. But I don't think they can afford to lose him for nothing, like letting him walk. Only if someone offers a ridiculous offer sheet. Like if Dallas comes in out of nowhere and says, "Hey, we'll pay you $12 million a year." Like, no, just don't do it. But if no one offers anything, which I think could be a thing, sign him and nene him, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's their play. And we'll get into some LeBron permutations later when we talk about the Rockets, because it's going to be hard for certain teams to sign him outright as a free agent. There's some opt-in and trade and sign-in trade possibilities there, so maybe they can get off of a bad contract. But yeah, I think if LeBron leaves, you're definitely you're tearing this thing to the ground. There's no point.
And you're winning like 3 lotteries.
Yeah, I mean that's your hope, because like what a team built around this team without LeBron James, at best wins 30 games next year.
Wow, that
at
high?
Best.
You're that high?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
All right, let's switch to the Golden State Warriors now. They have far fewer concerns than the Cleveland Cavaliers. There was some like weird speculation going on throughout the finals about like, well, maybe Kevin Durant's unhappy, maybe he's gonna leave. He put a quick rest to that. He told Rachel Nichols of ESPN that he's going to re-sign there. They just need to work out the details. Also, like, the dude just won 2 rings and 2 finals MVPs. Why would he leave? I don't care how miserable he is there. Like, first of all, we don't know that he's miserable there.
Yeah, I was
like,
just
he's
about
miserable.
to say.
He's like curmudgeonly with the media, but like,
that's
okay,
not a team.
Right. That's one very small component, and I feel like we're extrapolating that part of his interactions with the media members as, oh, he hates it there, he hates his life, he's going to go somewhere else.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think being raised in that OKC system that's very protective around the media, maybe that did something to him.
Oh yeah, that screwed him up, and that screwed Russell Westbrook up as well. Like, I'm almost looking at it as fortunate for James Harden of getting out of there that early.
Right.
But even him, nowadays, like, he's not a talker to the media.
No.
Like, so.
Yeah. But with that Chris Paul interview, I remember after game 3 or game 4 where Chris Paul came back and he was like about to talk about, oh yeah, I'm feeling like I think it was an ankle injury or something. He's like, yeah, it's feeling better. And then James Harden was like, yeah, he's fine. He's fine. And Chris Paul's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. But yeah, so Kevin Durant is staying with the Warriors, which means they're going to have Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Iguodala, Sean Livingston, KD all locked up to some capacity. They do have to rebuild the rest of their core. I mean, they do have Damian Jones, Jordan Bell, cash considerations, and Quinn Cook all signed. But they have Nick Young, Zaza, Kevin Looney, JaVale McGee, David West are all unrestricted free agents, Pat McCaw restricted. Among that group, if anyone, who do you think the Warriors should try to bring back next year?
Pat McCaw, because he's young. And Kevon Looney potentially, but he didn't pick up his 4th-year option. The thing is, I read somewhere that they were trying to go younger this year, that they will try to get younger.
Yeah.
And that would imply to me, like, a guy who, like, Sasha Pachulia is probably not returning.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Young, maybe? I know that they really like him as a teammate, and that matters. But, I mean, okay, if he accepts a minimum, you might carve out room for him. David West is the weird thing here because I kind of think he's necessary. Like he's one of those glue guys that doesn't really get talked about enough. JaVale, I also think from a production standpoint is extremely undervalued. Like when you look at his numbers on a per minute basis, he's extremely productive. Like when he's out there, he's going to get boards, he's going to get points, he's going to get blocks. And I think there's a certain reliance to that you kind of need. So Nick Young, for my money, and Sasa Pachulia should be out of here. Kevon Looney is probably out of there regardless because he wants to find a home where he can get more minutes. And then from there, keep McCaw and sign young guys. Like they found success in signing a guy like Quinn Cook. Go that route.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're spot on with McGee. I mean, he played really well in the finals. Like, I know he has the reputation of being a knucklehead from way back when, but like he was especially in games 2 and 3, he really helped stem any momentum Cleveland was trying to generate. Like game 2 especially, like didn't he score 8 points in like the opening few minutes of that game?
He was ridiculous. He's just got a lot of dunks. And when you have rat tails, you're automatically awesome, apparently. So.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, I think if he's willing, I don't think they give him more than the minimum. So, if he's not willing to sign there for that, he's probably gone.
Right.
That's going to be their biggest obstacle this summer, is they're going to be limited. Once KD re-signs, they're going to be limited to the taxpayer mid-level exception and then just veteran minimums. So, you're going to have to get guys like McGee. I mean, like Nick Young took the taxpayer MLE next year. That's probably not going to go to him this coming season. So you're going to have to rely on like the goodwill of, okay, you sign here for the minimum. You're going to be favored to win a ring. The West point is interesting too, because I don't know if you saw, but Mark Spears of the Undefeated after Game 4 spoke with him. And, all of the Warriors were trying to play up the, like, oh, we had it so hard. This is so tough, blah, blah, blah. But then David West gave some comments that were like, you guys have no idea what happened here this year. And when it comes out, you're going to lose your shit. Which is like, I'm really interested now. That hooked me. Tell me more, David West. So
I have the quote here. There were things internally. When you guys find out about that shit, you'll trip. Yeah. It's a testament to the type of people these guys are, how tied we were as a group, and then we were able to win it. Yes, I did see that, and I was like, what? What happened?
Yeah. So you might be right. Like, they might need to keep West as like a peacekeeper, basically. Right?
But should we just speculate on what happened here?
It's got to involve Draymond and KD.
Oh, no, I think, well, that could be a thing. I'm thinking Draymond and Nick Young.
Why? Like, they would just
Because
cut Nick Young.
Nick
if
Young
it was that
finds
serious.
himself in weird situations all the time. Come on.
I enjoyed him after they won,
Oh,
saying he went from getting snitched on.
Went from being snitched on to getting a ring, right?
Yeah, something like that. So good. I'm so ready for Swaggy P NBA champion era. It's gonna be great. All right, Mort. So they took Young with the taxpayer MLE last year.
Right.
Who should they try to spend it on this year if they go after someone outside of the organization?
A wing. I'm not sure who, but definitely a wing. I think it would be awesome if they actually tried to go for his Sonia. I know he's probably going to earn more, but just tell him, you know what? You're so young. You can build your game up with us. You can learn from the best. And we can still use you. Like, you'll come off the bench. You'll get minutes both at the 2 and the 3 and the 4. Like, you'll get minutes. Because I do think they needed some offense off the bench as well. So, here's my big concern. I love Andre Iguodala. I really do. I think he's a wonderful defender, playmaker. Like, he just brings a whole lot. But you have to wonder at this point, with his age and his ability not to be a strong scorer anymore, like, he's really limited as a scorer at this stage of his career. Like, are you looking at him taking a step back minutes-wise? Because I'm not sure he should be playing like more than maybe 18 minutes a game anymore.
Well, definitely during the regular season, because you just want to preserve him from the playoffs. Right. And I think, to your point about offense, I think that was what Omri Caspi was supposed to do. He just, they ended up having to waive him because they needed to make room for Quinn Cook because they needed to replace Steph while he was out with the MCL injury. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like Zonia is just going to become our new player on this podcast. Like, we both just love him so irrationally, but like so much. Yeah. Like, way too much for a player that hasn't done all that much of the NBA.
No, but we love him because the Orlando fucked up. Yeah, that's why we love him.
I'm willing to cape right with you. I love him too. But he would be interesting. ESPN's Chris Haynes was on a podcast recently, and he said Trevor Ariza might be willing to take a discount to join the Warriors, which would be if that happens, game
Goodbye,
over.
Houston,
Right, like everything I said about the Warriors not ruining the NBA, if Trevor Ariza, if they can get him with the taxpayer MLE, it's lights out. Like that's just going to be too much. But yeah, I think you're right. It's someone like a 3-and-D wing, ideally, but I think you lean more into the offense than the defense if you have to pick between the two. We don't know. Right now, they don't have any draft picks, but some team is inevitably going to pull a Bulls and sell a second rounder to them. The Sixers have 4 of them, so I'm almost assuming one of them is going to Golden State. Are there any targets in the second round, either late? The Sixers have 38, 39, 56, and 60. So are there any targets, sleepers, that you're really high on in the second round that you think would be great in Golden State?
Gary Trent Jr.
Oh, the kid from Duke?
Yeah. Freshman. Averaged 14.5 points in his freshman season. Shot the ball really well. One of the best shooters in the draft. Has some potential as a scorer, which again I feel is a need for them because realistically Golden State has 3 guys who can really score the ball. Because I am no longer counting Draymond among that group from an offensive standpoint. Like before, but he declined from a scoring standpoint.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
He used to be better. So I think they need someone else to come in and just provide a scoring kick. And Gary Trent Jr., I mean, he sure as hell fits that bill. So if he's there, he might not be, but if he's on the board at 30, was it 38 and 39? Yeah, yeah, you go for it. You go for it.
I think there should just be like there other 29 general managers or 28 plus Brett Brown because the Sixers don't have a general manager at the moment. Oh, I guess the Pistons don't either. Great, cool. The other 29 teams should get on a conference call before the draft, and they should all say, just make a bond, like. No matter what happens, no matter how cheap our owners are, do not sell the Golden State Warriors a draft pick this year. We saw what happened with Jordan Bell last year. Don't do it. If we want to restore competitive balance, don't give them ammunition to add a young player that will like keep this core alive longer than it is. You need to deplete them of young talent, make them do what like Cleveland did over the last couple of years, and like trade away all of their picks and only have like 37-year-old Kyle Korvers to shoot 6% in the finals. That will bring an end to this Warriors team. If you let them get guys like Jordan Bell and Quinn Cook, it's just going to go on forever. Don't sell them a pick.
And then the Bulls will raise their hands, and then Mark Cuban will say, no, you're still on a timeout. No.
Right. Yeah. Before we move on from the Warriors, again, we've seen a lot of this Warriors fatalism. They ruined the NBA. They're just going to reign forever.
Yeah.
Do you think they're locks to win the title next year?
I mean, we don't know. The NBA summer is always ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this year. They wouldn't have won the championship if Chris Paul hadn't gone down, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, Houston made moves that, from just a theoretical standpoint, was better. Made them better than the Golden State Warriors. You have Kyrie Irving coming back, Gordon Hayward coming back. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are both going to be a year older and wiser. Same goes for Terry Rozier. Al Horford is an alien. Look, I can't sit here and go, oh, they're going to win it again next year. You don't know. Yeah. I mean, if LeBron joins Houston, then what?
We'll get into the LeBron to Houston in a second, but I'm with you overall. I mean, you're right. Like, if we recorded this podcast at June, whatever today is, June 9th, 2017, that was like 2 or 3 weeks before Chris Paul forced his way to Houston. We would not have pegged Houston as a legitimate, like, a threat to win 65 games and to take the Warriors to 7. Right. So, yeah, You're right. Like, there's going to be some wild shit that happens this summer. I can almost guarantee that with no inside sources. It's just how these things have trended as of late. And I think, if anything, these finals are going to serve as a wake-up call, not only to the Cavaliers and to LeBron James, but to everyone. Like, what are, like, the Portland Trailblazers and the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors and the Washington Wizards sitting there thinking right now? They're like, our core right now probably can't beat the Warriors. We need to somehow shake things up drastically. Like, it would not surprise me to see major, like, player movement of all-stars or all-star caliber players this summer. So, but you're right. Like, Houston, if they bring everyone back, is going to be right there. Boston, I don't know why they're not being mentioned as the biggest threat to the Warriors right now. I think Boston has a genuine shot to beat the Warriors next year. Like, I think it's almost a level playing field at this point if everyone's healthy on both sides.
Right.
Boston just has... You need so many two-way wings against the Warriors, and Boston has that. Like, they have the type of talent to really give the Warriors problems, and they have enough go-to scorers that, like, where do you attack Boston? I genuinely don't know.
Hayward, probably, because I think he could use... my apologies. I think he could use a year to get back into, like, full playing shape, maybe. And that's going to be the major storyline for Boston going into next season, isn't it? Like, how about Gordon Hayward? Where is he at? Like, he basically tore off his ankle.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we'll talk about Boston shortly, but let's go into Houston now, Mort. First, we just need to address the LeBron James and Paul George rumors, among others. Kelly Iko of Rockets Wire, which is part of USA Today, has been reported that not only are the Rockets going to go after James, but they're also eyeing Paul George as well. So I want to just break down, like, the mechanics of this first, because I wrote an article for B-Ball Breakdown, which you can find on Clutch Points, about the LeBron James to the Rockets thing especially. And I've already seen, like, I want to do this so on Twitter, when we start seeing Paul George suggestions and LeBron James suggestions, we just keep these things in mind when you're suggesting trades and opt-in trades and sign-in trades and all that stuff. The Rockets right now, not counting Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, and Clint Capella, all of whom are free agents. Capella is restricted, the other two are unrestricted. They have $77.6 million in guaranteed contracts on their books for next season. The salary cap's $101 million, so that leaves them, give or take, $23 million without factoring any of their free agents to sign LeBron James, who can make 35. So even if they trade all of their other players aside from Jaden Harden, they're still Harden alone makes $30 million, so that leaves roughly 71 to divide between Paul, Capella, and LeBron. Not counting cap holds, not counting. They're gonna keep Capella. They'll keep him just his cap hold because it's only like $7 million. And he's gonna make more money, but they would have like 10 incomplete roster charges at that point. The free agency route it's impossible for the Rockets unless Capella, LeBron, or Chris Paul are willing to take significant discounts. I don't think any of them are to the degree that they are. So free agency, if LeBron does not opt into his contract, he is most likely not going to Houston. They could try to sign and trade for him, but if you sign and trade, the team receiving the player who is signed and traded is hard capped. So you can only you can't exceed the luxury tax apron, which will be, give or take, about $129 million. So again, even if you trade, let's say somehow the Cavaliers are like, yep, we'll take Ryan Anderson and Eric Gordon back for LeBron James. That's fine. And the salaries are basically even between Anderson, Gordon, and LeBron. Even if that happens, you then have $52-ish million to divide again between Chris Paul, Capella, and Trevor Ariza. And that's it, because you're hard capped. You cannot exceed that $52 million mark. So you're probably losing at least Ariza, and you're still relying on Chris Paul to take a $10 million discount or whatever. So that's probably not going to happen. You could do the opt-in and trade, but at that point, what does Houston have? You have to get rid of Ryan Anderson's contract just to make the salary matching work, but Houston doesn't have anything in terms of young prospects to make that enticing for Cleveland, other than you can give up, sure, 2 or 3 unrestricted or unprotected draft picks, like a 2020, 2022, 2024. But is that enough? To take $41.7 million and 2 years left on Ryan Anderson's deal? Probably not. So it's going to be really hard for them to get LeBron. I don't doubt Daryl Morey at all, but just he has to jump through a lot of hoops. Paul George is a little bit easier because his max salary is $5 million less than LeBron. But I don't think the opt-in and trade is a realistic possibility, because if he opts in, I think his player option is $20.7 million, something like that. His max salary is $30.3. So he'd be taking almost a $10 million discount if he opts in. I mean, if he hates Carmelo Anthony that much, maybe he does, but it seems like the sign and trade route would be more likely for him, and then again, you run into the hard cap problem for Houston. So with all of that long explanation, Mort, do you think Paul George or LeBron James is a realistic possibility for Houston this summer?
Did we think Chris Paul would be a realistic opportunity last year?
I think Chris Paul, at least, I don't think that was even on the radar, really. Was it? I don't remember.
No, it wasn't.
It just came completely out of the blue.
Right, and Morey worked some serious magic. Here's the thing. I agree with you. I read your piece, and I'm in full agreement that it looks impossible. Yeah. And I still have this feeling that in a couple of months, we'll be sitting here right where we're sitting right now and trying to break down how Daryl Morey did it.
Yeah. That's how I ended my piece, was I don't doubt Daryl Morey. I will never question his wizardry. This will be his masterpiece. What we thought Chris Paul was his masterpiece. This will be his masterpiece if he pulls it off. But it just I don't know how you make it work with Anderson. I mean, it's been reported before that teams were asking for at least 2 first-round picks just for Anderson alone. I think my conclusion with the LeBron thing was Cleveland's going to want to get off of a bad contract of its own. So you can package Anderson, Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker for LeBron and J.R. Smith just to make LeBron continue playing with J.R. Smith as punishment. And that is cap legal. But then, again, Houston is so depleted at that point. One of Houston's biggest strengths was its depth this year. Not counting the playoffs where they went to a 6-man rotation. But, at that point, you've got Harden, Paul, LeBron, or Paul George, and Capella, and that's it, basically. Is that... You're going basically the Warriors route at that point, where you're just so top-heavy. that one injury does you in, and you're building around
minimum deals.
Yeah. And you've got Chris Paul, who I don't want to say is injury prone, but he's had his fair share of injuries as of late.
Mm-hmm. I would just like to I would like you to read back that top heavy core again, because there's my answer: Chris Paul, James Harden, LeBron James, and Clint Capella.
Yeah,
dude,
I know.
That's better than the Warriors.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but
I agree. I personally, I think the Rockets are better off just running back their core, and then going after whoever. I mean, if they can retain Ariza especially, and not have him go to the Warriors, and then maybe they'll go after our baby boy Mario Hezonja.
No,
yeah. So like get someone with the taxpayer MLE and just run it back, man. You had a 65-win team. You had the Warriors on the ropes in Game 7. If Paul doesn't get hurt, I think if Iggy never got hurt, the Warriors would have beat the Rockets in 5 to 6 games, which is Draymond said that after Game 4 last night. He said if the Hamptons 5 figured something out about the Rockets, and they would have won in 5 if Iggy never got hurt. So I think they would have been favored in that series. They probably would have won. But when Iggy went down, the Rockets were favored. And if you're a Rockets fan, you shouldn't root for injuries. You shouldn't bank on injuries. But again, the Warriors are really top heavy, and one injury can really level the playing field. So, I mean, the Rockets have a really damn good team. I don't know that you need to take a stick of dynamite. I understand the reasoning behind it and why you would want to, but I personally, I just think you should run it back.
But if that stick is LeBron,
yeah, I know, it's fair. It's tough. It's a tough decision for Daryl Morey either way, and I'm sure he's having a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah, but I'm moving forward with that. I'm sacrificing the core if it means LeBron. I am.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because look, here's the thing: Eric Gordon, and I'm so glad he's back to health.
Mm-hmm.
But we know injuries can always pop up, and what is Eric Gordon at this point? 31? Is he 30, 31? Something like that?
I don't know.
I don't even remember.
Is he that old?
Oh, no, he's not. He's just 29. All right, well, you know what? Fair enough. That actually changes my perspective a little bit. It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I thought he was older, where I was like, oh, you can sacrifice a guy that age, but he's in his prime. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. Not intentional, but no. I mean, it makes sense. It also depends on who you can get in free agency. If you run the core back, there are going to be some attached ring chasers who will show their interest level. Yep. The thing you have to gauge is what type of caliber of players are they, and would the caliber of players being ring chasers increase if it's LeBron there instead? Like, how many more guys in the league would go, oh, LeBron's there?
Yeah.
I think that's a legitimate thing as well. Like, you could have some serious guys going, you know what, I'm going to take a minimum just to play with LeBron.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. I think they're going to get those types of guys either way. Like, I would assume a Marco Bellinelli is already, begging for Daryl Morey to call him at midnight on July 1st. I think the system they run, any chucker like that is especially going to be, intrigued in joining that system, because they see the green light that Gerald Green had this year, and they're like, right. Yes, I want that.
Oh, but he won't get minutes though. You have Gordon, you have Harden, and you have Gerald Green playing the two. Mm-hmm. Poor Marco.
Gerald Green's not signed beyond this year.
I know, but he'll re-sign for the minimum.
Yeah,
of course he will. Yeah, I think they're pretty loaded at the two. They need some more. I think they need a little bit of size, and they need a 4 who can come in off the bench. Because apparently Ryan Anderson is just no longer a part of their plans, or I don't know if he is. It doesn't seem that way, at least. So I think they need something there. A little bit of size wouldn't hurt them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Mbah Mute would have been that guy if he didn't hurt the shoulder. I think that just threw them off. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really interesting summer for the Houston Rockets either way. Let's say where they do, regardless of the LeBron stuff, Chris Paul is also an unrestricted free agent. He reportedly does not plan on giving the Rockets a discount. So he is already, 32? No, 33. He just turned 33 at the beginning of May. How nervous are you, if you're Daryl Morey, about giving him a 5-year max that's over $200 million?
Oh, I'm not nervous about that. I'm not doing it. I'm not giving him a 5-year max at that age. No way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about a 3-year max. That's. I mean, I could swallow that, but 5 years? No way. No, I mean, then I'd just go, Chris, I love you. We would have won the ring, but no, thank you.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm with you. I mean, we just I'm trying. I was thinking back on what 35% max that's been handed out since these came into existence looks good right now. The only one I could think of is Steph Curry.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
John Wall's is horrendous already. Russell Westbrook's is horrendous. A lot. The Bulls traded
Harden.
Jimmy. Oh, Harden is good too. Yeah,
Harden's good too.
Yeah, but the Bulls traded Jimmy to get out of it. The Kings did the same for Boogie to get out of it. I just think a 5-year max is really prohibitive to build around, especially with a 33-year-old point guard who just had a hamstring injury. And I think you're right. You basically do what the Raptors did with Kyle Lowry this past year, except you just give Paul the full max because whatever. At that point, it's only a couple $1 million difference anyway. But they'd be playing with fire if they give him a 5-year max.
But just to note on the Jimmy thing, I think the situation in Minnesota really affected the perception of what he's worth. And then you had what was that injury called? The meniscus. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Look, let's be painfully clear. Jimmy Butler, especially when you look at his last season in Chicago, that's an MVP caliber type player. He's absolutely outstanding. He's still one of those guys people just do not talk enough about. Now the meniscus thing is there. Right. So obviously I'm in your boat. I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole when it comes to the designated 5-year max. Obviously I wouldn't. Yep. But prior to that, if no meniscus tear or no meniscus issues, I don't remember the exact injury. I don't know if it was a full tear or if it was just a partial tear. Mm-hmm. But regardless, no injury, Jimmy Butler, hell yeah, I do it.
I think the only concern is the Tibbs factor with him, where it's just is he 28 going on 35?
Oh yeah. Obviously, yeah. I should rephrase, without the Tibbs factor. That's because I've been saying for a while, Tibbs should just go now. I don't think he should be the coach next year. So
no, but I'm saying he played for Tibbs for so long and he played so many minutes that you have to worry about the wear and tear on him. I mean, it was only really 4 seasons, but and really only 4 seasons that he really put huge number of minutes on his body before he left Chicago, and I think it was only 2 or 3 of those seasons with Tibbs.
Yeah, two full seasons with Tibbs where he averaged almost 39 minutes a game, and then Fred Hoiberg brought him down to 37. Then he came to Minnesota, and it was actually 37 this year, so 36.7 actually.
Yeah, but
Tibbs,
he hasn't played. I mean, he's played one 70-game season over the past 5. I think you just see how quickly Luol Deng dropped off, and you have to worry about that a little bit. But no, I mean, Jimmy's a great player. This isn't about him. It just goes back to my overall stance on these 35% maxes, where it's there might be 10 players in the league who deserve him, and I don't even know if it's that many. I think there really might be 5 or 6 guys who you can feel comfortable giving those contracts to.
Oh, I hear you on that one. I would agree. I mean, the thing is, it's just too much money. When you look at Blake Griffin's deal right now, it's just it's handcuffing everyone, really.
Yeah. Well, because the problem is, too, so it starts at 35% of the cap, and then it goes up 8% every year. So if the cap does not go up 8% every year, which it hasn't the last 2 years at least, I mean, it's projected to, but who knows what happens there. but like it might even start taking up a larger proportion of your cap in future years. So it could be 40% by the end, which is just devastating. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's I think for the Rockets and Chris Paul especially, the 3-year max is the fair way to go on both parties, but it's going to be really fascinating. Daryl Morey is going to have quite an interesting next couple weeks. Let's wrap up more with the Boston Celtics, who, I mean, if any of all of the teams here, aside from the Warriors, they've got to feel the best about where they are right now. Because Houston just had a hell of a season, and they have so much more uncertainty than the Celtics do. Like the Celtics really, you've got your whole core in place at least for this next year. You've got Hayward, Horford, Irving, Tatum, all of them are under contract. Jaylen Brown's under contract. Marcus Morris is under contract. Terry Rozier's under contract. The big question mark for them is Marcus Smart, who's going to be a restricted free agent. If you're the Celtics, how much do you pay to retain Marcus Smart?
Yeah, I'm not high on Marcus Smart for that reason, because I don't think he's a guy you should break the bank for. When he's a defensive minded player, and rest assured, like he's gotten better offensively, especially near the basket. Like he's become a post up option, and that's all fine and dandy. But we've seen how the league has expanded outside the 3-point line, and he cannot compete in that area. So I would look at him to sign for something like tops $10 million a year. But he's going to ask for a lot more. And then here's my follow-up to that. Is Marcus Smart going to be the new Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley type as soon as he leaves Boston? Because if he is, I would almost be intrigued to see like if some team out there offers him a lot of money and just go, okay, sure. Because then you clog up someone else's cap.
Right.
And then he turns, the Cinderella dust leaves him, and he just turns into a pumpkin again. And from there, you look at the competition, you go, oh, one down. Hey, right. Terry Rozier, go get an offer next summer.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fair concern. I think Smart, obviously, as you said, not a super efficient offensive player, 36.7% overall during the regular season, 30.1% from 3. Defense is where he's going to make his mark. I don't think he's going to turn into a pumpkin. If he left Boston, I think he'll still be a productive player wherever he goes. I think, maybe another coach doesn't give him the type of leash that Brad Stevens does, like knowing that he's going to take some really bad shots and probably miss them and hurt you offensively, but what he brings in terms of intensity and defense, makes up for that. So maybe he ends up, like on a Dallas Mavericks team, if Rick Carlisle just gives him a much shorter leash or something like that. And in that case, he would turn into a pumpkin. But I think he'll be a productive player wherever he goes. Yeah, defensively.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But here's the thing. Like, for his career, he's shooting 36% from the field.
Yeah.
On 2,200 attempts. Imagine if you go somewhere else and you realize, oh, that number was actually inflated in Boston thanks to Brad Stevens.
Oh, yeah. No, that would be bad. Yeah. I mean, if I'm the Celtics, I think I would overpay for him a little bit. Like, I'm telling him to go, I'm making a relatively low ball offer. And I'm telling him to go get an offer sheet, and we'll decide whether or not to match it. But I would probably go up to like 12 to 14 million a year just to keep him. I think he's that vital a piece.
So you would give him more than Zach LaVine, actually?
Well, I think Zach LaVine's going to get a lot more than that too.
That's what we know he will because of hashtag Bulls. But in terms of where you and I were talking about Zach LaVine a couple months back. And we were like pretty steady on, max should be like 11 million a year because he's just that flawed of a player.
Right.
So I find it interesting to kind of compare the two because I think they're polar opposites. You have this very intense defensive oriented Marcus Smart, and then you have this very lackadaisical offensive minded player in Zach LaVine. Like, I think it's interesting to like kind of gauge what type of contracts they're going to get.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And I think if it wasn't Boston, I wouldn't offer 12 to 14 million. So Boston may not have.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like they might not have to deal with that, but if I'm Boston, I would match up to that amount. Like, and maybe Sean Marks just like goes and tries to mess with Boston just because that's what Sean Marks does with restricted free agents. It would be hilarious. But I think he's just so integral to what they do defensively. And again, let's go back to the 2018-19 season. I think Boston's the biggest threat to the Warriors, even more so than the Rockets, as things are currently constructed, not knowing where LeBron's going to sign, whatever. Like, Boston has a real shot to beat the Warriors next year. If you lose Marcus Smart, that reduces your margin for error considerably. Like, I think part of what makes Boston such an appealing threat to the Warriors is that they have, not only are they going to have the depth and the wing players, but they just have, 5 guys who they can really plug on Curry and Thompson and KD. Like, they've got Tatum and Brown, they have Hayward, they have Marcus Morris, and if they keep Smart, like, you can just throw just a rotation of those guys on all 3 of Golden State's top scorers at all time. And as you said, like, outside of those 3 guys on Golden State, they don't really have a takeover scorer. Maybe they get one this summer, but probably not, just given their cap restrictions. So if you have like that many guys and you can stay fresh and you can throw so many different looks at them, I think it's going to make life really tough on the Warriors. Whereas if you trade Marcus Morris for cap relief, or if you let Marcus Smart walk for cap relief, then you're putting more on Tatum, Brown, Hayward, which maybe that works out too. But I just think, I think Boston is right there. I think they are ready to win a title next year if they just keep this group in place.
And that's why you overpay.
Yeah, like you push your chips in right now.
You've actually convinced me.
Nice.
I was not high on Smart in Boston because I'm looking at that team and I'm really looking for more efficiency, because also Terry Rozier under 40% from the field. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at that team and I'm going, oh, this team needs some more offensive firepower, especially coming off the bench. They need someone who's a little bit more efficient. But you're right. I mean, the defense ability to switch so many things. And let's be honest for a second. Even if Kevin Durant tries to back down Marcus Smart, he won't gain ground on him. Like, he might fade away and hit a jump shot over him, but he won't get necessarily near the basket.
Right.
Like, you can block Marcus Smart on 1, 2, 3, and even like on a weird switch, he can guard effing Draymond. I mean, he can basically guard everyone. Yeah. And that flexibility in the play, we've just seen the playoffs. Everyone switches. Everyone needs these weird matchups. So, fine. I'll say this, though. It's essential for Brad Stevens coming into next year with Marcus Smart, back, and letting him know that the shot attempts needs to be smarter.
Yeah.
Right. But they need to just be better overall. I mean, you can't really sustain this type of, or you can't overcome, I should say, this type of efficiency deficiency.
I agree with that. And I think when you add Irving and Hayward back to the mix, I would assume just by virtue of like having 2 more high usage scorers to distribute touches to, like, Smart's shots would just naturally go down. Like, I don't think you're going to have, Boston this year, because especially toward the end of the playoffs, like, they were just so limited in terms of their depth. They had to play a couple offensive non-threats at the same time. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that as much next season. Like, I think you're going to have really, at most you'll have 2 non-threats, if they re-sign Aaron Baines too. And I'm still triggered. Like, maybe he's just going to always hit corner threes for the rest of his goddamn life. So maybe he won't even be a non-threat. But, if you have a Hayward, Horford, Irving, Tatum, Rozier, Jaylen Brown, like, all of those guys are legit offensive threats now. So, like, Marcus Smart's going to know where he sits on that totem pole. He's going to know, like, my job is to just get open corner threes on offense, basically, and then just, like, destroy whoever I'm guarding. Like
Tony Allen with a corner 3, basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get aboard with that.
Yeah. All right, so a couple interesting ideas that I've seen floated with regard to Boston. First of which, the possibility that LeBron James goes there. And Jonathan Sharks of The Ringer, he wrote an article that came out on Friday called "LeBron's Terrifyingly Plausible Path to Boston." It's actually pretty convincing. I mean, it's a Bill Simmons run website, so I'm totally shocked that they're plugging LeBron James to Boston. But it's basically, if he does the opt-in trade, much like he would do for Houston, they have the type of contracts. You probably have to trade Gordon Hayward in that deal back, and then package him with, the Boston has as many as 4 first-round picks next year. So they have, whereas Houston doesn't have the good players on the contracts that you would want, or the prospects or draft picks or whatever. Boston could make a pretty convincing case for an opt-in and trade if LeBron is willing to do it. Do you think it's a realistic option?
I mean, does Cleveland take Hayward?
Why not?
With that contract and with what happened last year, I don't know. Doesn't that seem like a pretty big gamble?
I guess so, but if you're, it depends on what else, obviously, Boston. I don't think it would just be Hayward for LeBron straight up, but, depending on what else Boston is willing to package, and if Dan Gilbert isn't ready to, go into the 25-win morass.
No, then I actually have an idea here, because then, obviously, Cleveland would know LeBron is leaving regardless in one way or the other. And then you could look at it sort of like we see these salary dumps that are getting paid off with draft picks. Mm-hmm. Where you just go, okay, so LeBron is traded to Boston, and Boston gives up 2, maybe even 3 first-round picks, and that's in sort of payment for taking on Hayward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sharks suggested, he said the simplest deal would be LeBron for Hayward, Marcus Morris, and a first-round pick. Maybe you throw in an additional pick or 2. I mean, because you are getting LeBron James, but
right.
The point is, I mean, it's feasible. It would be an absolute dickhead move of Danny Ainge to do, but as Jarks noted, that's not even the worst thing he's done. He traded Isaiah Thomas coming off of a hip injury 3 months after his sister died, and he rushed back to the playoffs.
Well, I mean, Danny Ainge has always been honest about this.
Yeah, he's ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, he told the media once that he really didn't care if he had an all-time Celtic at the end of his career, and everyone wanted him to stick around, like Paul Pierce.
Yeah,
essentially,
right.
He was like, "Hey, nope, doesn't matter. I'm looking at the big picture." Yeah. So, but yeah, you need to, one of those wings in Boston needs to go the other way, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. So this idea would be, I'm guessing, ultimately, Kyrie and LeBron back together. Okay.
I know. That's we'll get there in a second.
Yeah, Kyrie at the 1, Jalen at 2, Jason at the 3, and LeBron at the 4, Al Horford at the 5, and Cher Rozier coming off the bench is your 6th man. Good Lord.
Yeah.
That's help, Brian. That's help.
Well, and you're listing positions for Brown, and Tatum. It doesn't matter. It's 3 interchangeable wings.
Right.
You have Kyrie as a ball handler, you have Al Horford as your center, and then the rest are just who cares?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, absolutely, you're right.
Yeah.
LeBron could even play some backup center, really. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, if LeBron's quest is to win a ring next year and he doesn't care about the perception or whatever, Boston is arguably the most logical destination if they can make it work. That said, given all of the battles he's been in against Boston over the years, and especially I wouldn't be totally shocked if there's a little bit of frustration still with Kyrie about demanding a trade and basically ruining the Cavs' chances in 27-18. So it wouldn't.
It's LeBron.
Yeah, I know, but it wouldn't shock me if he instead is you know what? I could join Boston, or I could instead go to another team and destroy Boston.
I don't think he thinks that way anymore, do you? You think he thinks in those? Don't get me wrong, but do you think he's that petty at this point now?
Probably not, but it'd be hilarious if he was.
Oh yeah, no, I know, and I know you want anarchy, but I think LeBron is one of those guys who just doesn't care about those things. I mean, when you look at the whole, I think that was a very '90s thing. You know, oh, Reggie Miller would never go to the Knicks, for example. Like some of those things. I think LeBron is just wired differently, and we're in an era now where everyone is so buddy anyway, and they talk to each other, they have friends, and they, you know, it's all about agents and, you know, connections, and it seems pretty random where guys end up sometimes, just like off of personal relationships. This romantic mindset of having a guy stay with the same organization for 15, 16 years, it seems to be dead now, really. I mean, Kobe and Tim Duncan were really the latest. Oh, Nick Collison.
Yeah.
Nick Collison, actually. Yeah, shout out Nick.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I could totally see it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised about 5 or 6 teams LeBron could go to.
And we aren't going to make our predictions, our final LeBron predictions today, because we need to see how the draft shakes out, and we'll do it toward the end of the month. But yeah, he certainly has a number of options. But I thought, if nothing else, Sharks' column was very well argued, and it was like, it makes you think like, oh shit, this is more of a possibility than we want to acknowledge. Like, we've heard Houston, Lakers, Sixers throughout the year. Boston feels like if they're willing to make it happen, that might be his best option. But
how fun would it be if LeBron signed with Dallas? Just
Ew,
like no, but just for the randomness of it. Just,
I actually really believe in Nerlens Noel's potential. Nerlens is represented by Rich Paul. There's a clutch sports connection there. The other notable storyline with Boston before we finish up here is Kyrie Irving's future with the franchise, because we've heard a couple interesting things as of late. Chris Mannix of Yahoo Sports on a podcast recently said the Celtics should be scared to some degree of Kyrie Irving walking in 2019. He said there are people in Cleveland that will tell you that the Knicks should be considered a real threat for Irving because Kyrie had talked about it with some players in the Cleveland locker room. So, you know, maybe things have changed since he went to Boston, saw how far they went, realizes they'll be a real threat next year. We're not going to address the possibility of LeBron going to the team and then him wanting out again. But do you think Kyrie is illegitimate, more on the market in 2019 than we realize?
Yeah, I mean, look, he was actually very interested in joining the Bulls because his buddy, Jimmy Butler, was there at that point. So he's always looking at what's next, which is pretty easy to do when you don't believe the Earth is round. You can just look at it straight ahead. I mean,
God damn it! I can't believe that the final Game 4 was not all that. The outcome was relatively preordained. I'd say by halftime. So the biggest story to come out of Game 4 was that Kyrie had that interview with Sopan Deb of the New York Times where he remains a flat earther. It's amazing.
Yeah. So when he's looking ahead, he can actually see it. It's
right.
Yeah. No, but I mean, he's always been very inclined to think about his future, which I don't blame him for, by the way.
Sure. Sure.
And supposedly it was a legitimate thing that he would consider the Bulls because of Jimmy. And when Jimmy was traded to Minnesota, there were even some rumblings going, oh, could Kyrie be a future Wolf because he had a close relationship with him. For the Knicks kind of came out of nowhere for me when I read that.
Sure.
But I mean, Kyrie is a fun dude. He might have some reasons for wanting to go to New York. I mean, I don't know what they are. Honestly.
Well, Kristaps and
who might be out for a whole year, but I mean, he would be back
by 2019.
That's right.
And they have Frankie Smokes. They have the number 9 pick this year. They could actually have an intriguing young group of talent next year. They're still gonna. There's the problem is contractually they still have Joakim Noah on their books.
Tim Hardaway Jr., who they paid $72 million for. So
even Courtney Lee.
Courtney Lee also, he's at least decent. So
right.
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised by anything Kyrie sticks his mind to. He could end up in Dallas for all I know.
Yeah,
he's just such a wild card, and I think Boston would need to at least prepare themselves to have a lot of dialogues with him and ongoing dialogues to find out, okay, where are we at here? What's the plan?
Yeah. I mean, the Knicks are, especially with the Jimmy thing, the Knicks could be interesting because, we don't know what Enes Kanter is going to do with regard to his player option this year, but the Knicks should frankly hope he opts in. It's $18.6 million, and then he would be a free agent in 2019-20. If you can, you're probably, we don't know what they're going to do with Kristaps about giving him an extension or not, but if you don't give him an extension, he's only going to have a $7.5 million cap hold. You can just let go of basically everyone else. You'd still have to find a way to get out of Noah. You probably stretch him, or maybe he's productive this year and you don't have to, but doubtful. Yeah. But maybe there's a path for Kyrie and Jimmy Butler to team up in New York next year. Or not in 2019-20.
In 2019, yeah. That could be interesting. Interesting. I mean, so the core would be Kyrie, Jimmy Butler, and Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah, with Frankie Smokes and then Frankie, number 9.
Right, from an age perspective, it doesn't really line up.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
I will say this: Porzingis is so ahead of the curve for his age that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you still have a bunch of two-way guys like Frankie Smokes, Courtney Lee, even Hardaway Jr. a little bit. You got some of that two-way talent.
I'm still looking for the other side for Tim Hardaway Jr. What's the
fair?
All right,
but. Yeah, but I mean, if you're the Knicks and you get one of the Bridges at number 9 too, I'm just throwing it out there. I have no inside information here, but it seems like that's at least a possibility. But that goes to a lot of people during the playoffs were saying the Celtics should trade Kyrie and Terry Rozier's good enough as is. It's gonna be interesting to see what I think. I mean. As I said, I think the Celtics are good enough to beat the Warriors next year, so I think they're going to give this core a real shot. But Kyrie's future is going to be pretty interesting to keep tab on for the next year because it does sound like he's at least entertaining the possibility of going elsewhere.
Is. And, I mean, I know the Bulls have some interest because in 2019 they're planning to hit the free agency market. True. They're hoping to get a guy or two guys in from the draft for this year. Re-sign Zach LaVine, and then all their bad contracts that they've acquired this last year will pretty much expire, and they'll come in with flushed with the cash next year, and then they're looking for someone to add to that core of Lauri Markkanen and those guys, Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn or whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if his name was floated towards the Bulls as well. I don't think it lines up age-wise as well, just as I mentioned with the Knicks. So I don't think he ends up there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him use the Bulls as a negotiation tool. Yeah.
Well, we did hear that the Bulls are unhappy with Chris Dunn's work ethic, so maybe they won't be in the market for a
That was from Joe Cowley, though. But that's interesting. Yeah.
All right, Mort, that is a good place to wrap up. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Stay tuned. Just because the season is over does not mean we are done recording. We're going to have a bunch of draft content in the next 2 weeks. We'll be focusing on free agency as well. So check us out on Twitter at the NBA Pod. You can find our Twitter handles in our bio, so give us a follow as well. You can also find us on iTunes, so please subscribe, download, leave some 5-star reviews. We'd love any feedback. And we're now on the Almighty Baller Podcast Network, so check them out on Twitter at AlmightyCasts. Until next time, I'm Bryan Toporek, and I was joined by Morten Jensen. Have a good one, Mort.
You too, Brian. Next month, by the way, we should announce to people we're actually going to be maybe recording a podcast at the same location. Yes. I have a feeling that we are totally going to forget that.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a 90% chance we forget to, but yes, I will be going to Denmark for a couple days in July. So it'll be after free agency. So there may be a live podcast in which we get to freak out about LeBron James and Paul George on the Lakers and all the other stuff that happened this year. But in the meantime, In the meantime, Mort, thanks for congratulating me on Brian Colangelo being fired, by the way.
I think I did that plenty in
Yeah,
our group chat. But
That's
okay,
true.
just to wrap up with that.
Yep.
Wow, he's so getting divorced. Isn't he?
So getting divorced.
Yeah.
Oh my God, man. Yeah, I know. Speaking as two married men, don't throw your wife under the bus ever like that, or you're just never. Yeah, for his sake, I hope that she didn't lock all the doors and like when he came home that night, like all of his possessions were out in the front yard in trash bags, like on fire. But there's a pretty good chance they were.
Yeah. Oh. That was harsh, man. That was harsh to read.
I know.
Yeah.
It was bad.
But since you were asking me for it, which is pretty low, congratulations, Brian. Now will
Thank you.
at least put in the same type of effort in pushing the good vibes to Chicago for letting their management end up in a scandal.
Yeah, I'll start a burner account for Garpax tonight.
I think you need to. We need some sort of scandal in Chicago to change things.
Good. All right, Mort. We'll catch you in a couple days.
Definitely.